Welcome to the Mixology Talk podcast.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Julia, and we're the folks behind abarabove.com, the ultimate resource for craft bartenders, bar operators, and just about anybody else looking to make great craft drinks.
I'm a bar consultant with more than 10 years of industry experience.
And I run abarabove.com, bringing weekly articles and cocktail recipes to help you make great drinks and grow your career behind the bar.
Welcome back to Mixology Talk Podcast. This is episode number 111. And this week I had a chance to have a great conversation with Matt Heyman. He's the owner and founder of Review Miner. He spent a lot of time mastering the art of getting good reviews for companies and, more importantly, getting those reviews online. And today he's going to share some of his advice and some tips as well. He also runs Review Miner, which helps to streamline and automate the review management process. I think you'll agree that the advice that he shares with us will work for just about anyone. Now, I just want to call out the fact that we were battling technology the entire interview, so hopefully it's not too bad. We definitely wanted to polish it up, but unfortunately we lost about the last 10 seconds of the interview, so I kind of had to piece that last 10 seconds together. But I think you're really going to enjoy this interview, and cheers, everyone. So by the way, if you are interested in finding out more about Review Miner by the end of this podcast, go to mixologytalk.com/reviewminer or use the coupon code MixologyTalk to get an exclusive lifetime 30% discount and to help support this podcast. Now let's go ahead and get into the interview, shall we? Well, welcome back, everyone. Excited to have a guest with us today, somebody that can help with reviews. I know this is a big pain point for a lot of operators out there. I know it was something that I had to work with when I was a manager as well. So very excited to have Matt Heyman on. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for inviting me on. Really pleased to be here and excited to have a chat with you.
Yeah, and we're excited to talk to an expert in social media review management and offer some tips and kind of just pick your brain really about kind of some of the best practices and obviously talk about the business that you launched around this whole idea. So can you tell us a little bit kind of how you started in the business and kind of what got you inspired to start your own company?
Yeah, so I've been working in digital marketing for about 8-9 years. As you can tell, I'm from the UK. So I've been working in the industry, about 8-9 years. And we started back then and still do work with businesses large from the very small right the way up to very, very large in the UK predominantly. And a couple of years ago, probably about 2 or 3, 4 years ago, we were approached by a couple of our clients, and our clients at the time were very concerned about the growing importance of online reviews, and they didn't really feel particularly well prepared. They were getting a good stream of positive reviews, most of them, but they were also getting the 1 or 2 occasional ones where they were being less than complimentary and in some cases not particularly fair. And they approached us and asked us if we would be able to help them with that process. And I built the first version way back then of Review Miner about 3-4 years ago. And since then they've had some fantastic results with it. And more recently, in the last 6 months, we've built out the platform to something that we can offer to the wider public. So, very much a digital marketing background, but now focused mainly on helping businesses sort of take back control of the reviews.
Excellent. And so when we talk about social media platforms and reviews, what are some of the main social media platforms that operators should be aware of and some that they might not have heard of before as well?
Yeah, at top of the list, won't be any surprise. That would be Google and Facebook. They're the two that businesses really should be very aware of in terms of how they function when it comes to reviews and also how they can play a role in that. So Google and Facebook, I would advocate as being the two that business owners should really focus on as a priority. And then after that, I mean, it's difficult because it's dependent on the amount of time that a business owner has really. You could spend, it's almost a full-time job in some cases to manage online reviews. So I would say if you're time limited, which most people are, Google and Facebook should be the priority. But if you were to go outside of that, I'd probably follow it with, say, TripAdvisor, Yelp, maybe Foursquare, particularly if for listeners, clearly you're in the bar and restaurant industry. Those would be the main ones. Yeah, focus on Google and Facebook and then TripAdvisor, Yelp, and maybe Foursquare if you have the time.
Yeah, and just a quick question on that. Do you think that Google and Facebook reviews
have more weight than Yelp does at the moment, or are they kind of gaining momentum on Yelp? Because Yelp here is a kind of a cornerstone of our review ecosystem, is the word for it. But I know that from some of the people I've worked with in the past, I know that Google Reviews has a lot of like small benefits across their entire platform when you do it right.
Yeah, so I would say the main rationale for going with Google would be that the majority of people who are looking for places to go out for a drink or a cocktail are going to predominantly start that journey on Google, on a Google platform. So I would say that's why I would go with that as a priority, because you want to be going where your potential customers are. And that's probably one of the first things they'll see. So what I would advocate any business owner do is just, and they probably do this already in some cases obsessively, is go onto Google and type in bar, restaurant, in the local area where you're based and have a look and see what the landscape is. What are the businesses, what are the competitors that are showing in those local search results that you see at the top of Google, usually just below the ads if there are any. Have a look at those. That will give you a flavor of what's happening locally, who's showing up there. The advantage of going after more of those Google reviews is because it's slightly harder to leave a review there. It's also more authentic. It's less open to abuse. And so those are kind of the couple of reasons I would say Google should be your priority. Hard to fake a Google review. Google are very aware of that. And it's also where your customers are probably going to go as a priority. Facebook, then you have the social dimension to it. So there's opportunities there to be seen by a wider audience, but who are local to your area or connected to people who like your brand and like what you do. So you kind of have the hardcore sort of local search, if you like, with Google. You have the more social component with Facebook, and then TripAdvisor and Yelp are kind of blended in between. So yeah, I would go with those and Google mainly for kind of a local SEO, search engine optimization play, and then Facebook for more social.
That makes sense. I know, like I said, I know how kind of Google operates, and they leverage that information across all their platforms, Google Maps and all the other places. So that's really interesting. I've never heard anybody express it so perfectly before. So thank you for that. And now, since operating a kind of a review site or a review management site, more to the point, how can operators increase the number of positive reviews that go onto their online kind of footprint?
Yes, there are a couple of ways that they can do it. I think the one that I would advocate people start with is ask your customers for reviews. You would be amazed at how few businesses we see have nothing in place to actually capture the feedback from their customers. And maybe there's an important distinction to make between feedback and reviews. I'm sure we'll come back to it later, but they need to ask their customers for feedback and for online reviews. There was some research that I looked at which said about 7 in 10 people said they would leave a review for a business if they were asked. The challenge is actually asking in the first place. Particularly hard as well for bar owners, because unlike a restaurant or a hotel where usually you have an email address as part of the booking process, with a bar, you have the walk-ins and you don't have that booking process. So a little bit harder for a bar to actually source that in the first place. I'm sure we'll come on to ways they can do it. But yeah, the first thing would be just ask your customers for reviews. The difficulty with that approach, though, is that if you ask everybody for a review, you're going to get a mixture of reviews. So in a way, and one of the reasons why we built Review Miner was to try and add in a layer where you could filter out the people who'd had a not so good time and focus on the people who've had a great time. And we'll come on to that. I'm missing an awful. But the first step is to ask the customers. And if you're not doing that, if you don't have anything built into your process around that, then you're really missing an opportunity. But the beauty of that, though, as well, is that if you're not doing it, your competitors probably aren't either. And if you were to do it, you're not going to need a great deal of effort to actually rank above some of your competitors if you really want to go for it. It's not that difficult to do. It's just about being prepared to take back control of the reviews process and do something about it rather than make it a passive thing that just sort of happens that you then respond to when everything goes south.
Right. And I think this brings up another question as well is, I know I've seen some good ways of gathering information and reviews from customers, and I've seen a lot of kind of, to be completely honest, terrible ways of doing it. And would you recommend kind of the more personal approach of like, hey, by the way, hope you guys had a great time, like kind of vetting them in the beginning, and then throughout the conversation say, hey, by the way, it would mean a lot to us if you would leave a review. Is that kind of the best practice, or is there kind of a better way of doing it?
I think that's definitely a laudable approach. It's well worth trying. But I think in a way, what you're doing is you're going too quick for what you want. It's very much, when I hear you talking in that way, and I hear business owners talking that way, it's very much come from the perspective of, can you give us something else? We've got your business. That's great. But we want just something a little bit extra. And I think that's where it falls down, because in a way, you've got the custom, the guys sat in the chair or the girls sat in the chair, they've had a nice experience and you're asking for something else. And in some cases, although, in the big scheme of things, it's not difficult or time consuming to do, perceived time and the perceived effort is quite high. So that's why I make that distinction between feedback and reviews. I think if you ask for feedback, and if you ask for feedback on a platform that you control, then you're into something that's a little bit more about you, approaching the customer for something that will help them improve as a business and improve the experience for other people as well. So it's quite a subtle difference in language, but I think it's important. So in terms of the nuts and bolts, the practicalities of it, what we would advocate is that you have a place, a platform, a survey effectively that you have control over, that you direct people to in a very light touch, discreet way. Usually at the end, once they're paying the bill, you would direct them to a survey and say, look, we'd love to get some feedback from you in terms of, how we've done. I may not even introduce it verbally. I may just hand them a nicely printed business card with a link, a short URL, a short link. And I would say, look, here's a card. We'd love to get your feedback, another time. Because as well, if people have had one or two cocktails, it's going to skew things possibly in some cases. So, take the card. When you've got some time, we'd love to hear your feedback. And, if you just have a look here, that would be great. So make it as effectively, what you want to do is reduce any barrier to getting that feedback from the person. But you also want it electronically, because once you have it electronically, it gives you a lot more, there's so much more scope for other things that you can do.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great idea. What you're recommending is either putting it on a business card or making it very subtle, like on a check somewhere, very obvious, but not pushing it too much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a big fan of a company called Moo Cards. Moo.com, I think, is their URL. It's very quick and easy and low cost to get a card printed, which looks to some extent like a business card, but you can have some slightly quirky designs and something really nice and solid that you can give to somebody, something that they're not just going to throw away like they might do with a receipt or a bill, something that they can keep that in their wallet. And it's just that little reminder to then go back and just tell us how we did. I think that's a nice way to do it. But yes, you could also, I know certainly in the UK, some of the big chains will put that at the bottom of the bill or the bottom of the receipt, as we call it. And yeah, there'd be a link on there. But I like the idea of giving something extra, like a card, something that's a little bit more substantial. I can't really pinpoint why, but I think it just is, it's a little bit more, you can grab it. It's there. You've got it in your wallet. You're not just going to discard it with all the other paperwork that you have in there.
Right. Absolutely. Because I've seen so many people try to put it on the receipts. And to be completely honest, they're, I think, kind of ineffective. So I love the idea about the card with the URL on it as a way of kind of just standing out a little bit, like make you look at it and say, this is different. And then kind of hopefully drive more reviews.
And the important thing is that you're sending them to a survey. That could be, now I'm clearly in favor of our own product, but that could be a Google survey. That could be a SurveyMonkey survey. That could be any survey. But as long as you send the customer to that survey, ideally as soon after the purchase as possible, then you want to have a couple of questions in there that really get them thinking about what you did well and what you did not so well. So yeah, you want to be asking for the feedback. Really important distinction in language. Ask for feedback at this address. And then once you've done that and people are in the kind of the funnel, I suppose, if you like, then once they've left that feedback, what you can then do, if it's electronic, the beauty of that is you can filter. You can say, okay, you didn't have such a great time. Okay, so really sorry to hear that. Here's what we'd like to do to make it right. And on the flip side, we're thrilled you had a great time. We'd love you to come back. And you can get really sophisticated in some of the messaging that goes with that as well, which, we can get into if you want. But I think once it's electronic, once you have the ability to sort of branch people off. When I was a kid, we had these choose your own adventure books where you'd have two options at the end of a paragraph of text and you could go to different pages and create your own adventure. If you want to do that kind of branching, that's where you're really going to see some really powerful results, because someone's had a bad experience and they've gone through the process and left that feedback for you. Chances are you've probably taken a bit of the heat out of how they were feeling. But on the flip side, if they've left great feedback for you, it's not that big of an ask at that point to then say, look, we've got this great review from you. This feedback's superb. How about sharing it on Google? How about sharing it on Facebook? Here's a link to our page. Here's a link to a page which makes it so easy for you to leave that review on that page, that it's just a no-brainer for people.
Sure, absolutely, especially if they're already fans of what you do. And no, absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. So let's kind of talk about the flip side, because in a perfect world, we would see nothing but 5-star reviews or 10-star reviews, whatever the system may be. But we all know that things are going to happen. Things are going to fall through the cracks, and not everybody's going to be perfectly happy with whatever service they get. So what are some of the ways that best practices for handling negative reviews that have made it out into the digital world?
Yeah, I think it starts with being honest. It starts with recognizing that mistakes do happen and that's okay, and that most people will tolerate those. So if you're in a bar and the server comes over and they tip a tray of drinks over you and your party, that's a bad experience. It's a mistake. It wasn't intended, but it happened. And how you correct that and how you try and rectify that is as important as anything else, really. So I think it's about being honest and saying, look, did we not fulfill what we wanted? One of the ways I like to think about this when I'm working with a business is to get them to think about the ideal customer experience. If you were to map out the moment a customer walks in through the door to the moment they leave, what would that ideal customer experience look like? And then start to use that feedback as a sort of a lens, if you like, to look through, well, did we really manage that on this occasion? Did we really do everything that we would want to do? So I'm not excusing negative reviews. I'm not excusing some of the people who leave, frankly, crazy negative reviews. But I do think there's an element of responsibility on the business owner to say, well, did we really do everything we could? And if we didn't, then let's be honest about it. Let's be upfront about it. So I guess the response really depends on the nature of the review. If it looks suspicious, if it looks like, okay, this is somebody who's clearly, maybe it's a competitor, or I don't know, a friend of a competitor, or there's something not quite right here. My advice in those circumstances is to just be polite, say that you've looked into it. So almost kind of the way I would do it is, we've looked into it, but I need a bit more information from you. Can you maybe reach out to us or reply to this and tell us when you came? What day was it? What sort of time was it? We'll look into it further and really try and get to the bottom of the problem and try and correct it. So what you're doing very subtly is actually saying, we're not sure you were ever a customer of ours. We're not sure you ever came in. But you're not just saying that, because I've seen in some cases businesses will respond to a negative review that they're suspicious of by saying, we've no record of you as a customer of ours. Well, that's kind of poking back at the person. You're going to go, well, no, you're wrong. I like to do it in a slightly more positive way and say, look, we want to get to the bottom of this. We just want to work out when you came in, what happened. So ask a couple of questions, and that will come across, and that will look very, very positive to other reviewers, other customers who are looking at those reviews. So I would go in with that. If it's that type of a reviewer, you need to go in with a couple of questions related to the time, the date, when it was. Do you remember who it was who served you? That kind of thing. So that, you're subtly saying to other people, look, we're not even sure they came in. So on the flip side, if it looks like the review is a genuine review, if it's something that somebody's left after they've come in and things didn't go to plan, then my own advice there really is you want to address the review on the platform. So if you're on Google, then use the Google My Business Manager to reply to the review. Look to put things right, but I wouldn't do it at any cost. I think sometimes people can go a little bit overboard, want to try and put things right, maybe add in phone numbers, email addresses. Not always so keen on that. You want to make sure that other people, because really what's the purpose? Yes, of course, you want to make it right with the customer, but if they've had a really bad experience, the chances of them coming back are minimal. So what you're really trying to do is damage limitation. You're trying to show other people who are looking to possibly come to your venue that you're an owner who is open to making things right if things don't go to plan. So don't do it at any cost. It might be hard to reach out directly to the person as well. So I wouldn't necessarily try and contact them outside of the platform. I think that does leave you open a little bit to people sort of really kind of trying to get everything they can from you. I would just keep it brief, damage limitation, show that you're willing, show that you're out there, that you want to try and put things right, but subtly, you're not going to do it at any cost.
Perfect. So you wouldn't advise, a midnight response and flame the customer. And I know that's been something that has gone viral for a couple of restaurants in a negative way.
You'll be amazed to hear that, no, I don't advocate that you go on all social platforms and flame the customer. Yeah. No, I don't suggest you do that for one second.
It will definitely make the headlines and your name will get out there, but not always in the best way.
Oh, you'll definitely get traction.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay.
Amy's Bakery on Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares. I still remember that episode. I don't know if did you ever see that?
I don't think I did. There has been a couple other ones that I've seen where the operator just went crazy on a customer that had something negative to say.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to look that one up. Amy's Bakery, Gordon Ramsay.
Oh, crikey. YouTube. There's a couple of hours gone on YouTube.
Okay. Thanks for that, man. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
An operator. Oh, man. No. So we talked a little bit about kind of managing positive and negative reviews. And I know this can be a handful. And one of the things that I remember as an operator, early operator, was you kind of feel a little bit on the helpless side for gathering reviews, or putting them into the system and, kind of getting people to review you. It almost seems like a happy accident when it happens. How does your platform kind of help operators get a little bit more of a handle on it and kind of manage their social media presence up?
I think what we tried to do when we built the platform, we worked directly trying to fix issues that our clients were facing. So it wasn't a case of us in an ivory tower building a product and then saying, well, what do you think? We built it from the ground up with the business. So one of the things they said is they want to kind of almost have a set it and forget it type approach. They want to have something that once it's set up, once the process is in place, it kind of takes care of itself. So that's exactly what we did. We built a platform where once you've created a survey, a feedback survey for your customers, and you get them to there, then the work is predominantly done. The goal is get them onto the survey, let Review Miner take the strain, and then you can focus on other things. So yeah, most like anything really, as a business owner myself, I mean, not in the bar industry, but as a business owner, the power of having processes is so important. It's an aspect of your location. We could still do things better ourselves here, but I think having a process in place is so key. And this is something that once you've done it once, it's there, it's working, and it's kind of set up, then all you need to do is make sure that when the guest comes in or the customer comes in, they are directed to a survey, in our case, one of our surveys that's branded with your colors, with your look. And then once they're there, the work is done. The positive reviews are treated differently to somebody who's less than positive. And the platform takes all of the strain away and it automates the process as best it can.
Excellent. Okay. So you're leveraging technology to free up some of your time, but still getting the benefit of being almost hands-on with it.
Yeah, the beauty of the platform as well is that ultimately you also do want the feedback. Every customer that we worked with when we developed the product this isn't just a case of we're not bothered what happens after this. They use the feedback. They're looking at the feedback. In some cases, they're weaving it into staff meetings. They're looking at members of staff who've been identified as giving a very positive experience to a customer. So it's not just a case of, maybe I'm being a little bit glib when I say set it and forget it. You want to get that feedback, and the feedback is useful at helping a business understand, the experience that people have and the themes that emerge from that. But yeah, ultimately, you want to there's so much technology out there, there's so much scope, but you don't need to be particularly technically minded to do it. With a platform like ours, it's a case of, I know I need to get the feedback. I have an idea of the sorts of questions I want to get the answers for. And I also want to make sure that if people have positive things to say about the business, I want to do everything I can to send them to the platforms that I want to send them to with the least resistance possible, and not going directly, like to bring it all the way back to the start of the conversation. You're not going directly in from the start and saying, by the way, could you leave a review for us, a positive review for us on Google, Facebook, and TripAdvisor? That would be great. Thank you. Because most of the time they're going to say, no, they're just not going to do it. So we're kind of using that principle of micro commitments, of small commitments, one at a time, that eventually lead to that person then sharing their review with loads of other people.
Excellent. Okay. So with the customers that you've currently worked with or have worked with in the past, have you seen a pretty noticeable uptick on the volume of reviews that they're getting and the number of positive reviews they're getting online?
Yeah, definitely. So what we typically see is the review profile will shift upwards without a doubt, because you're asking for feedback. Not everybody who leaves the feedback is going to leave the review, but the majority do, on the positive side. So we generally see that the review profile, what we would call the review profile, the average score, say on Google out of 5, would shift upwards by a good bit, but it's done nice and organically. This isn't a case of going on to Fiverr or one of these other sites and getting like 50 fake reviews in one, and all of a sudden you've gone from nothing to amazing. So it's nice and gradual, looks nice and organic, looks nice and natural to all of the different platforms. We see that general score go up. We see this is more but in some cases, more importantly, we see the number of negative reviews start to diminish, because if the person's gone through the platform, they've left their negative feedback in the platform, platform then doesn't encourage them to leave that review everywhere. So it kind of takes the sting out of it, takes the heat out of it. And if the follow-up messages that the person sets within the platform are positive, then 9 times out of 10, they're just going to go, okay, well, I've had my say, I've vented, and now I don't feel the need to now go and tell everybody about it. So you do still see the occasional negative one, because there are people who won't use the platform or will feel so strongly. But then a lot of the other good practice tips I've shared with you would be what you would implement in those cases. So by and large, it just takes the heat off the negatives and emphasizes and enhances the.
Perfect. No, that's great. And especially if you could use a service like yours and you don't have to dedicate so much time to managing this. Because I know you can spend as much time as you want just trying to figure out new pipelines for this and setting up systems around this. So that the fact that it's already created and it works so well that I think it makes a lot of sense.
In addition to that, Chris, as well, you've also got the fact that from a marketing standpoint, because that's my background, from a marketing standpoint, you start to develop 2 lists. You start to develop a list of people who've not had a great experience with you and a list of people who have. Now, when it comes to sort of managing ad spends and some of the other work that I've done in the past, what better way to tidy up some of your spend than to remove all of the people who've had a negative experience? Why would you market to that group of people? Really, you want to market to the group of people who've had a great experience, because I'm sure a lot of your listeners are going to be familiar with things like MailChimp, Constant Contact. Those services are looking at your unsubscribe rates. They're looking at the number of people who open your emails to add in. So if you start to develop a list of people who've had a great experience, now you start to get a bit more sophisticated in who you market to. You can start to remove all of the people who've had a negative experience from your email list. Don't preempt the next time you send it when you lose a couple of percentage points of your email list. Just remove them if you want to. You don't have to, but that would be one way to do it. Platform also allows you to add in things like your Facebook pixel. So for those who are a little bit more sophisticated, that then allows you to create custom audiences in Facebook that you can just market to. So you've got super fans as one list. That's a very, very low cost way to market to people. And also you can exclude the people who've had a bad experience. So maybe I'm getting a bit technical, but when you start to think about it as taking all of those people who walk through the door, sit down and have a drink in your bar, and now start to split them off into lists based on their experience and how you treat those lists, there's some really powerful things you can do.
I think you kind of touched the tip of the iceberg as far as how to manage data and your email list and marketing to audiences. I think we can go down a giant rabbit hole as far as that goes.
Yes.
And I think it would be a really interesting conversation, because I think that, obviously not today, but in the future, that I think a lot of operators struggle with how to do this well, how to market well. And I think that having somebody with a marketing background that has a service like this and can talk knowledgeably about, all right, now that you have this information, what are some of the best practices for marketing to your guests and getting a higher commitment rate for coming back and that kind of stuff? That's an area of the business that I'm super fascinated with. Anything data oriented and how to utilize data, I think definitely is kind of going through my brain almost all the time. So
yeah, but also to do it on autopilot as well, to do it in a way that doesn't require lots of manual touch points. It's just a way to do it on autopilot. I'm with you on it. I think when you look at, we were talking before we started the conversation, it's 5 times more expensive to get a new customer than it is to retain an existing customer. Yeah. And now we've got platforms that will allow you to identify those customers who've had a great experience. Very, very straightforward to get them to come back. Oh, we saw you came and had a great experience. We've got a new drinks program, or we've just added a new cocktail. We'd love to get you to come back and try it. That's a very different approach to marketing than cast the net wide and see if you can get 1 or 2 extra new customers through the door.
No, absolutely. I think we could probably talk for hours about marketing and how to leverage technology and automate systems for that, because it's super fascinating on my end. It really is. But we'll have to make that another time. So one of the things that I've known, I've done a bit of consulting over the last couple of years, and I worked with around about 100 different clients. And one of the things that I've struggled with from time to time, or some of the operators that I've worked with from time to time have struggled with, is how to handle, or they go through a time where they struggle with negative feedback. And it almost seems like it all happens at once. Over a 2-month period, their Yelp score or their Google score seems to be dropping all the time, like, 1, 2-star ratings. Obviously, I think there's something wrong with the operations there that probably take a little bit more of a look at. But is there any best advice that you would have for an operator that's kind of struggling with kind of this band of negative reviews that they're going through?
Yeah, it's a shift in mindset. It's a shift in mindset away from being reactionary and at the mercy of the feedback towards, this is something I'm going to take ownership of. There's so many different parts of the business that the business owner will feel like they own. They know what happens when the person comes into the bar, or they take ownership of things. And this seems like an area a lot of the time where the business owner either doesn't know how to or doesn't want to really take ownership of the problem. And for me, it's about making sure that you embrace, that you start to think about feedback and reviews as a way to market the business for the future. And it's something that requires a process around this. You use ReviewMiner, you use SurveyMonkey, it doesn't matter, whatever platform you use, you have to have a process that, so I'm into growing fruit and vegetables at home. So when you have a raised bed, you put so much soil on top that weeds and grass can't grow. You make an environment which is less conducive to the weeds and the grass coming through. And I think it's a nice analogy for this. You want to create an environment where the likelihood of some of those reviews getting through is a lot less. Doesn't mean they won't, but it means you're going to suppress and make it a lot less likely that someone's going to leave that negative review. So it's a longer term strategy. It's something that can't be fixed overnight, but when you put it in place and you lock it in, and you know everyone on your team, they're giving out those cards, those customers are going and they're leaving their feedback, and the really good ones are sharing that with other people, then over time what you'll do is you'll have a profile that reflects the true nature of the business, that's less likely to get those negative online reviews, and that the good ones, the really, really good ones, stand out, and they're the ones we'll pay attention to. An interesting side point, there's also been some research looking at how people respond to different feedback scores. And the research suggests that people trust a 4.5 out of 5 star review profile more than a perfect 5-star review profile. So I wouldn't be worried about loads of negative ones if you have something in place that's going to try and correct that for the future.
That's super interesting. Yeah, because as you know, just a kind of an operator, or your brain kind of thinks 5 stars is the best, so I want to have 5 stars. But to your point, 4.5 stars kind of shows that there's some honesty in the reviews, because not everyone's going to leave a 5-star review. That's really interesting.
Yeah. You shouldn't be aiming for perfect 5-star reviews. You really shouldn't, and also, so it begs the question, why is that? Why do people trust a 4.5-star review out of 5 more than a 5-star? Because people are human and they know other people make mistakes, and that it's how you respond to those that's more important than being perfect.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. So I think that actually, can you tell us a little bit more about your company? How can people look into it? Where can they go to kind of check out your product?
Yeah, so the product is called ReviewMiner, and I believe you're going to have a link to it in the show notes. So I would just encourage people to go there. We have a 30-day free trial that people can sign up for, and the monthly price starts at, I think, $29.99 for the lowest price plan. So it's definitely accessible for businesses of any size, but also scalable for larger businesses as well. So yeah, I just encourage people to take a look over there. We have a free training course, 5-part video course. But a lot of what you've been saying, Chris, has actually kind of, got me thinking. So we haven't spoken about this. So what I'd like to do is, if any of your listeners decide that they would like to sign up and become a ReviewMiner customer, if once they've signed up, they drop me an email, matt@reviewminer.co, drop me an email and tell me why they should have a free 1-hour consultation call with me. And I'll pick the best one, and I'll give them a 1-hour consultation one-on-one over Skype, and we can hatch some plans as to how we're going to get your reviews back on track. So the only thing is, sign up for ReviewMiner first, then drop me an email, and I'll pick one, and I'll keep you guys posted on how we get on.
So perfect. And hopefully there's going to be a few operators that will take you up on that. We all know how important our online reviews are for our businesses, and being able to have some time with an expert would be extremely valuable. So thanks again to Matt Heyman, and hopefully we get a chance to get him back on the show to talk a little bit more about marketing and automation. Cheers, everyone. So another huge thank you to Matt for coming on the show and sharing some of his insights. I'm guilty of thinking if I do a good job, good reviews will follow, but I think Matt's proven that there's a lot more to it than that, and a proactive review strategy can make a huge difference to your online presence. If you'd like to learn more about ReviewMiner, head on over to mixologytalk.com/ReviewMiner, and don't forget to use the coupon code MixologyTalk, all one word, for 30% off. Thanks again for supporting A Bar Above. Cheers, everyone.
Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.